Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy, Ira Cooper, and Kurt Leavins. And if we weren't all such modest fellows, I'd say we were the Fab Four. But we are modest fellows, and that's kind of an overstatement in any case. But we're the swell four. All right, we're going to do the first 50 games of the year. We're going to take a look, an overview of those 50 games, and we're going to use the format that we always use, but to tweak it slightly since there's four of us. We will have 4 good things, 4 bad things, and 4 numbers today. So, Bruce, why don't you start it off with your good thing?
Okay, I'll come in late at the fair. And my good thing, the talisman for my good thing is Vincent Desharnais, who the Oilers called up right after game number 41, just as they did in the 2019-20 season with Kyler Yamamoto. They called him up after game 41, and their fortunes turned immediately. And credit to Desharnais, to whatever degree you choose, but somewhere in the positive, the insertion of Desharnais started a chain of events which I think helped to make the Edmonton Oilers better. Made them better defensively, it made them better on the penalty kill, and the new way that the team aligned with 7 D-men, 11 forwards, with 4 of those D being right shot and 3 of them being lefties, seems, at least in the short term, to be the magic formula. And the team has since gone on a 7-0-1 run, just pouring in the goals, outscoring their opponents by, where are we here now, Edmonton, 45 goals to 28. Since this was since game number 41, and they've just been seriously outplaying the other teams at both ends. And the 11-7 formula, featuring Desharnais as the 7th guy filling specific roles, just seems to be work better than previous renditions where the 7th D was always the left shot guy. And what's happened is the 3 guys that are on left defense are all kind of playing regular minutes. And Desharnais has taken a few minutes here and there from guys on the right side, and filling in a little bit for weaknesses. For instance, the Oilers for a while had Evan Bouchard and or Tyson Barrie, and for the longest time was Tyson Barrie killing penalties along with Cody Ceci in the top 4 of the unit. And with Desharnais there, they can consign both Bouchard and Barrie. It's not like, well, you got to use one of your right D no matter what. You can mix it up and basically taken Barrie off the unit and put Desharnais there. That unit's gotten better, and they've deployed, I think, Desharnais in situations where the big defensive presence was helpful. And in the meantime, they haven't got a 7th D-man who's taken minutes away from Philip Broberg. In the meantime, we have Broberg on the now playing 15 minutes a night as a true number 3 left defenseman on a very productive pair with young Evan Bouchard. They were both kind of looking for the right partner, and for now, again, at least it seems like they found each other. And they have they've really kicked the crap out of opposing teams for this last while from the 3rd pairing. And whilst I know everybody's all hot and bothered about the top 4 is got to be good, if your 3rd pairing is kicking the crap out of their 3rd pairing and 3rd tier players, you've got a 1-goal lead before you even have to worry about it. Just turn it upside down. I mean, you're just trying to outscore the other team, right? It doesn't really matter which line is doing the outscoring. And Edmonton's bottom lines have been doing that with the assignments they've been getting. And those guys have been heavily sheltered, but to their credit, they've taken advantage of that shelter and they've been doing the crap kicking. So good on them. And especially good on Vincent Desharnais, who's been I've had a soft spot for that guy. They drafted him in 2016, 7th round, his third available draft, and he came to the camp, that development camp, a couple of weeks later, and you couldn't help but notice the guy. He's 6'7", just towering over everybody. And he was, I was watching him and say, well, he's probably going to be slow. He's going to get beat wide. No, he's not really having that problem. He can turn both ways. You know, he doesn't look like he's skating that fast, but he's got a slow turnover, but he's longer stride. So, and oh yeah, he's big. And I kept coming back to how friggin' huge the guy is, how much ice he covers. And from there, from that raw start, he's worked his way in his draft +7 year. Here he is in the NHL and making the most of it. And to me, that is a good thing all in its own. Like, it's really quite a story to follow and quite a player to root for Oilers fans. And I think almost all Oilers fans have taken a liking to this big guy.
Yeah, unlike Niemelainen, he's not only physical, with his body, he's really nasty with his stick, which I never saw from Niemelainen. Let's be, if we're all completely honest, and I doubt any one of us disagrees with this, replacing Tyson Barrie on the penalty kill was crucial. Tyson Barrie's become a decent, even strength defender, but he was getting eaten alive on the penalty kill. His reads were off. He's not big enough. He's not nasty enough. He's just the wrong fit. But so Desharnais has come on. Bouchard and Philip Broberry are this fantastic third pairing defense group. Kulak's playing a little better. But Kurt, I want to just ask you, do you think the 7D is the right formula for the playoffs? Or as recently as a month ago, there was a widespread consensus that I shared in that the Oilers needed to trade for a defenseman, likely a second pairing left shot D-man who could play defensive hockey. Do you think that that's now out the window because of what's happened with the seven D-men formation?
I hope not, because they need to trade for a top 4 D-man. This is all great, and I'm happy for Vincent Desharnais. I'm happy for Philip Broberg. I'm happy for the new reduced roles that Tyson Barrie and Evan Bouchard are in. But let's project ahead to round 2 of the playoffs, game 6. And are you really going to be okay with these 7 guys as your defense pair? Yes, you shored up the bottom half of your defense. You didn't make your top 4 better.
All right.
And so, yeah, I think the club needs to trade for a top 4 D-man. Maybe they don't need as good of a D-man as they thought they needed, because maybe these guys have come together, and maybe you're just going to get a rental as opposed to a guy with time, right? But I think anybody who thinks that their number one thing on the shopping list isn't a defenseman, I think they're incorrect, because I think that's exactly what Ken Holland's looking for. One more quick thing. I know a lot of people are saying, Philip Broberg has made Evan Bouchard better. Sure, okay. I think what's made Evan Bouchard better is not penalty killing. No matter what you do in your career, if you spend a bunch of time doing something that you're not any good at, you won't have much confidence. And I think he was just put in a role where he wasn't given a good chance to succeed, didn't succeed, and felt shitty about it. Now that he's in a role where he can succeed, he's starting to play like the Evan Bouchard that we saw last year. And so I think Vincent Desharnais' number one contribution is making Evan Bouchard better.
Ira, let's go to you for your good thing. Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
We're already 10 minutes in, and it's almost becoming a disservice to not talk about Connor McDavid having one of the most historic offensive seasons in NHL history. And I don't even think I'm exaggerating when I say that. We're 50 games into the season, and he has 92 points, which is a pace of 151 points if he keeps it up and then doesn't get hurt. And of course, we all know about his increased goal scoring, 41 goals, which is a pace of 67 I remember about a year ago, we were talking about Austin Matthews maybe getting 50 or even 60 goals. And this was the most amazing thing ever because it's the new NHL and people don't get 60 goals. Well, McDavid's blowing right through that and is on pace for 67. If he gets to 151 points, it'll be the first time since I believe it was 95, 96 when Mario Lemieux got 150 points. And I believe it would make McDavid the 7th player of all time to get 150 points. And if he gets to, he's on pace for 67 goals. It's not that far off from 70, and I think we all know that historically McDavid has kind of picked up the offensive pace in March and April. So it's not unheard of that he might even get to 70. I think that would make him like the 8th player of all time to get 70 goals. So even if he falls a little bit short of these goals, it's, even if if you're not even adjusting it for era, it's one of the best seasons of all time. And then, if you want to adjust for era and think about, the difference in goal scoring between, the 80s and early 90s to now, it really is on pace to be one of the most historic seasons of all time. And when I think back and, whenever there's the debate about offense and people try and discount Gretzky's stats from the 80s a bit by saying, everybody scored a lot of points in the 80s. Well, that's right. But one of the things I always come back to is the gap between Gretzky and the second place or the third and fourth most of those years. And sometimes it was huge, like 50 points.
Every year it was huge, 70 points.
Exactly. McDavid's 92 points are 16 clear of the second place player and 20 points clear of the first non-Oiler, which is Kucherov with 72 points. And his 41 goals, aside from Pasternak, who's got 38, that's 7 goals clear of Tage Thompson and Mikko Rantanen. So, project that pace out another 30 games, just the gap between McDavid and everybody else. It's just a season for the ages that we're witnessing. And it's not like McDavid's getting, the cheap goals off his shin pad and in, or, tapping in a rebound into an empty net. I swear 2/3 of these goals are either a crazy end-to-end rush or one of his apparent new skills, which is shooting off the rush. Which he has to be one of the best in the league, just, coming down with speed, moving to the middle, changing the angle and picking a corner. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does when he starts to pick things up as he likes to do in March and April and where we end up.
That's the new thing with McDavid is the goals off the rush. That's the new wrinkle in his game. And he studied how people score goals in the off season, and I think he learned a thing or two. The one guy on the list, I'm just looking at the list of the top point scorers of all time. Bernie Nichols had 150 points one year.
Yeah,
the year Wayne went to Los Angeles.
That's astonishing.
We're on the same power play together. We're on all the same 4-on-4s together.
Is that it, Bruce?
And then Nichols and Wayne got the toughest opponents, and Nichols he was on a line with Robitaille and was it maybe Sandstrom? He had Dave Taylor was with Nichols and Robitaille. They had like the best. He had the best wingers, and he was kind of like where Leon is in terms of his position within the team, and he just and highly motivated. That whole Kings team in 1988-89 was pumped, getting Gretzky, and they just went for it. That was so Nichols. He's at the bottom of the list. There's only 5 guys. Ira, Wayne Gretzky 9 times, Mario Lemieux 4 times, and Steve Yzerman, Phil Esposito, and Bernie Nichols once each. So in other words, Gretzky has more 150 point seasons than all the rest of the NHL players in the history of the league.
All right. Kurt.
Just another routine Gretzky mark.
I also, another thing before we move on, when I was looking at that list, the one stat I don't think McDavid's going to get to where Gretzky did was the plus 100 one season I saw for Gretzky.
Bobby Orr's got that record. But yeah.
Is it 102?
124 plus 124, and Larry Robinson was plus 120.
Oh, geez.
So
Bobby was an okay player.
Some dominant teams. Some dominant
Yes.
teams. You could stack talent in those
they
days.
could never do that today. No
You could not.
chance.
Kurt, you're a good thing.
Stuart Skinner. I submit that the Oilers would not still have a shot at making the playoffs if it wasn't for Stuart Skinner. Jack Campbell's first half of the season was so disastrous that if they did not have a goaltender like Stuart Skinner that they could and did lean on, they would be mired deep in the Pacific Division right now. I think Stuart Skinner, not single-handedly, because as Ira rightly pointed out, there's a few other people that had a hand in this. I think he has rescued their otherwise would have been Seward season. And if you think about it, if Stuart Skinner had laid an egg as well, Ken Holland would have had to go out there and with his non-existent cap space, found someone else who would have, supposedly played better and would have had to spend precious assets in order to fix that problem then, instead of still having some money in the bank when we're coming up to the deadline now. I haven't even mentioned his stats yet, and the fact that he's an all-star in his rookie season. He has played so well. He practically carried this team, certainly from a goaltending standpoint, and where they would be without him is sunk. Thankfully, Jack Campbell seems to have at least found the semblance of his game now, and it looks like they can, have that A1, A2 tandem that we were all hoping we would have in the summer. But if Stuart Skinner hadn't been good out of the gate, I shudder to think where this team would be right now.
Indeed.
You spoke with Stauffer on Oilers Now today, and in your piece about the goaltending conundrum, as you like to call it, where Skinner has been that much better than Campbell, but yet for some reason the win-loss record isn't quite there. But I have to agree with Kurt that Stu, local boy, who I actually got to meet in person back in November, and was just as personable and nice as everybody says he is, almost single-handedly, but with a few other people, saved that season, and just gave Campbell the time to take the time that he needed. He basically, I think there was a 2+ week stretch where he didn't play any games, and get the practice time and get used to the new equipment and do what he needed to be done. And without having Stuart play above expectations, who knows where we'd be. And before I let somebody else speak, I noticed The Athletic has their updated rankings for all the trophies today, and they have Skinner as a solid second for the Calder. Logan Thompson no longer even on the list, I guess. I didn't read it that closely, but the advanced metrics and goals saved above expected and all that stuff. But Skinner's in there and second with a bullet behind Matty Beniers.
Very cool.
Yeah, the difference in records, if you think about it, is it's just pretty much the difference is 3 wins. If Skinner had been in for 3 more wins, turning those losses into wins. And I think it really does come down to he's faced just some hot goalies in the other teams' net. Anaheim goalie, CBJ's goalie, Columbus's goalie, and Comrie in another game. So it's not that confounding in the end when you really think about it. It's just luck of the draw. You face some hot goalies, you're going to get beat now and then. So my good thing is the last 8 games. We'd be having a very different discussion if they had gone 4-4 in those games. And instead, they went 7 wins and they had 1 overtime loss. So that's 15 out of 16 points. In those 8 games, they scored 40 goals and they gave up 20 goals. We measure grade A shots at the Cult of Hockey. The Oilers had 138 grade A shots in those 8 games. The opposition had 76. That level of domination is awesome. The Oilers have been playing awesome hockey in this 8-game stretch. It's kind of what some of us, including me, expected to see from the start of the year, that they would pick up where they left off in the playoffs against the Flames, at least, and be a dominant team in the NHL. And that didn't happen for a number of reasons. Maybe I was a little bit optimistic, and others are a little bit optimistic about that, but they have been that in the last 8 games. And the key moment, of course, is they win the first 2 games against the Ducks and the Sharks, and then they face Vegas, Tampa, and Seattle. And I remember a lot of fans were thinking, this could be 3 losses in a row. And, that fear was all over social media. And, it could have easily been. But that wasn't the case. They were able to beat Vegas 4-3, Tampa 5-3, and the Kraken 5-2. That streak defines their season against those 3 teams. They coming up big in those games just really put a stamp on this team as, maybe this team is a Stanley Cup contender like many of us thought. Maybe it really is going to build on what happened in making it to the Final Four last year. Maybe it has what it takes. Sure didn't look like it for a long time. It looked like, it wasn't as bad as the 2017-18 season when the Oilers completely collapsed after their great playoff run in 2017. But it did have the feeling of last year when they got off to such a tepid start under Dave Tippett, with inconsistent goaltending from Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, and it got Tippett fired. They looked like they were headed in the exact same direction. And you wondered how they were going to get out of it this time because, were they going to fire the coach again to incite everyone to work harder and start listening to the coach? They didn't do that. They didn't have to do that, it looks like. And Woodcroft, he got the chance where Tippett didn't get the chance to work their way out of it. They were never quite as bad as at the end of Tippett's reign in Edmonton. At the end of Tippett's reign in Edmonton, they did collapse, and that hadn't yet happened under Woodcroft, as mediocre as the Oilers had been up and down. But full credit to the coaches and the players. This last 8 games has been tremendous, and it sets them up to make the playoffs, and we'll see what happens then.
I think we're calling it the Vinny Desharnais era.
Yeah.
The Vinny bounce.
And
Indeed. A lot of guys, Clean Costin.
On what Bruce was saying, I think remember the game before the 8-game streak where Vinny was watching in the press box was the game where they gave up 4 power play goals, and in the succeeding 8 games, the Vinny Desharnais era, I believe it's only 2 total in those 8 games. So
it has been good. Let's move on to our bad things, gentlemen, and we'll start again with you, Bruce. What is your bad thing?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the disappointing first half of the young skaters on the team. I'm specifically going to exclude Stuart Skinner from this because, of course, as Kurt already mentioned, he has more than answered the bell to this point. But the younger skaters that the team was really counting on, I know I was as a fan. I was thinking, well, this is a natural place for these guys to grow. That some of the older players have moved on. Some of the big contracts mean the Oilers must get value from some of these entry-level contracts and bridge term deals. So 4 players that I'm going to mention here, 3 on ELCs and 1 that's on a 1-year show me bridge deal for $798,000. So he's actually cheaper than the other guys. They are in order of youngest to oldest, Dylan Holloway, who had 5 points in 37 games after game 41. Philip Robery, who had 2 points in 15 games and had missed a whole bunch of time and spent other time in the minor leagues due to 3 different injuries that he suffered in the first part of the season. And he was just having a hell of a time getting going. Evan Bouchard, who had 14 points in 41 games after last year averaging well over 1 point every 2 games. And he had a vicious bad minus of minus 14 at that time. All of these players were minus. The last one being Ryan McLeod, who had 9 points in 28 games, and he too had suffered an injury that put him out for several weeks. So in some cases it was, stuff happening to the player, but really in all the cases you could say, well, are the Oilers getting what they were expecting from this young player? And I'd have to say the answer was no in every case. So that takes us to the halfway point, which of course is just before this recent turnaround. And those guys have been some of the best surprises in the recent run. So I know Bouchard and Broberry playing together were each +9 in the last 10 games. Ryan McLeod scored 5 goals in his last 9 games. 5 goals in 9 games. I mean, gotta like that. And Dylan Holloway is showing signs of, outscoring his mistakes, which really he wasn't doing in the first part of the season. And he's showing real sort of progress by eye, and I would suggest also by stat. And all 4 of these guys have seemed to have turned the corner right around the turn of the calendar, or the halfway point of the season. So whatever, I think the future looks brighter than the immediate past in each case. So I'm happy to say this is a past tense bad thing, but it did really cause some grief in the first half of the season.
Alrighty, Ira, your bad thing.
You know what? My bad thing is going to parlay off Bruce's a little bit, and it's the disappointing missing expectations of I'm going to call them the mushy middle.
Hello.
And the $3 million men. We've talked about, the top of the roster a little bit. We have some superstars that are actually exceeding superstar expectations. And then we have a second tier, 2 other forwards that probably should be in the All-Star game that aren't. And even in the bottom of the roster, we got some guys like Derek Ryan that are exceeding expectations, Clem Costin that are exceeding expectations, but the 3 players that aren't are the 3 players that were competing, and I guess still are competing, for that one last top 6 spot on the Oilers. The $3 million men, Jesse Puljujarvi, Warren Foegele, and I'm losing my trail of thought here, Kyler Yamamoto. Bruce mentioned the kind of disappointing start to the season for young rookie Dylan Holloway. Well, I believe Dylan Holloway is tied in even straight points with both Jesse Puljujarvi and Warren Foegele, and that's with much less time in the top of the roster. For this, let me pull up my numbers here. For 5-on-5 points on the Oilers, the highest of those 3 is Kyler Yamamoto with 11 points. That's behind Derek Ryan. That's behind Clem Costin, who's only played 34 games. And then it's one point ahead of Evander Kane and his 18 games. And below that, Warren Foegele and Jesse Puljujarvi with 9 5-on-5 points. And I think each of them have 1 more point on special teams. So these 3, we have, I think everybody will agree, we have 5 legit top 6 players on this team with Evander Kane back. There's a spot there for somebody, and nobody's been able to step up. And even when Evander Kane was out, there's 2 spots there, and nobody was able to step up. Warren Foegele was healthy scratched, aside from the last game, about 2 or 3 weeks prior. He came back, and he had a couple good games, and I think he got some time up there, but that was it. Then he kind of, he's still trying hard and skating hard, but the production just isn't there. And these 3 guys are making $8.5 million or so between the 3 of them, and they're just underperforming. And unfortunately, one of the areas that we might need an upgrade is a middle 6 forward or top 6 or a right winger, especially with one of those guys probably being disposed of to open up cap space to get that top 4 defenseman that Kurt talks about, or depth defenseman, or maybe they're going to get a center like a Jonathan Toews or a Ryan O'Reilly. I think they might both be pipe dreams, but that'll allow Nuge to maybe play the wing full time. But my bad thing is those three underperforming veterans, I'll call them, the older youngsters.
The young vets.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm reminded of you when you talked about a trade. I'm reminded of the trade Colorado made last year to bring in Arturi Lehkonen, and what an absolute difference he made for that team.
No kidding.
And if the Oilers could find a guy like that
Oh,
to come in and replace one of these players,
yes, please.
that would be fantastic. I mean, that would be A+ for the scouts. Well, one thing about Puljujarvi, I was talking to a guy called Jim Barber, who's he's an expert in shooting the puck, and he's just a fan, but this is his passion in life, is shooting. And he made a really interesting point about Puljujarvi. And I wonder if you guys get the same sense. Whenever Puljujarvi's shooting the puck, I never get the feeling he's going to score. He's just someone who cannot pick the corner, who can't get a goal. And Barber made a really good point. He said he just, every time he gets it, he's taken too long to shoot it. He's got one of the slowest releases in the NHL. And I can think of incidents when that has happened. Of course, he does one time the puck now and then as well when it's appropriate. But when he does that, he just never is able to put it off the corner, bar down, anything like that. Put it off the bar, put it off the post. So, yeah, it is something that a young player that he's got to work on. And we saw the video of Draisaitl and him working after practice about a week ago. Man, this is one of those things where Jesse Puljujarvi, if he was willing to put in like 5 hours a week shooting pucks, it could mean the difference of $20 or $30 million in his life.
Or hire a skills coach.
The Oilers.
Jesse.
No, Jesse. Yeah. He could do that as well.
The players hire their own skills coach.
Yeah, Adam Oates, famously hired by so many players, including Darnell Nurse.
Yeah, the interesting thing on that shooting of David, and I don't disagree. But the thing is, he has shot the puck with authority and quicker in the past, like during the first half of last year when he had those, 23 points in the first 28 games and was playing with McDavid. There was a couple times they had a give and go, and Jesse went in off the rush and just roofed it, off the rush, and with a seemingly quick release. I there's a couple that I can recall. I haven't seen it in a year, like a calendar year almost. So he has done it, and I don't know where it went. I know confidence is a thing, but
Well, practice, Ira, breeds consistency, and I would suggest that listen, in beer league, I've had some damn good shots too, but they're few and far between. People can get lucky. People get lucky shooting the puck, and yeah, he will now and then get off a good shot, but he cannot consistently do it, and he has never been able to consistently shoot the puck consistently and pick a spot and hit it. And so I have no problems with so many aspects of his game. I think he's a strong forechecker. I think he's a strong back checker. I think he should be on the PK. I like him in a lot of ways, but his passing is really good. He's an unselfish hockey player, but he's got to score.
Yeah,
he's got to score, and he should. I think he should be, and he won't. But he won't start scoring until he makes some changes. I think in his training regimen and maybe his conception of the game, like his offensive conception, which is hard to do.
And before we move on, just to somebody else's bad thing, I would be remiss if I didn't say that when I lump those three players together, and I do think that the Yamamoto has been a little less disappointing than the other two. His 11 points is in fewer games. He's got the injury issues, which which are still
disappointing.
He also contributes on the penalty kill. I think he's actually second on time on ice per game amongst forwards on the PK. Foegele and Jesse are not special teams contributors at all. I know they tried to get Foegele up to speed on the PK, but he's averaging about 40 seconds a game. And Jesse, aside from maybe some mop up duty on PP1, or Hyman's not available at the moment, or for some reason it doesn't see any special teams. So Kyler's doing a little more in less games, and actually he's got the highest goal share percentage on the team at 5-on-5 from his time with Leon, and Jesse's on the other end of that spectrum. So I do think that Yamo's been a little disappointing. I think a lot of it's injury, and he just hasn't been able to sustain the season healthy at all. But all three of them as a group are a bit disappointing.
Yamo's
Kurt.
disappointments are injuries. He's got hurt 4 times in 7-8 months, starting with the Colorado series. In the preseason, he got hurt. I think he played because the roster was so short-staffed earlier than he should, and then they sat him as soon as Kane went down, and they were able to bring up a couple of guys, Janmark and Costa, and they sat him at that point, and now he's out again, and you kind of wonder about his long-term durability at this point.
I'm not sure if that's 4 injuries or one injury.
One injury 4 times, yeah.
Well put.
It's even worse in some ways. Okay, Kurt, your bad thing.
Evander Kane's injury, in a number of ways. First of all, the injury itself was ghastly, frightening, stomach turning. Thank God he's okay. Thank goodness for his family he's okay. That could have been bad. Had the player not thought quickly, had medical staff and training staff not thought quickly, that could have been much worse. A millimeter one way or the other, and we could have been talking about a very different injury again. Word is, because, pardon the graphic nature of this, apparently because the cut was so clean, it enabled them to do a proper repair of it, like there wasn't ripping and tearing. And so, so all that is bad unto itself. Then you subtract the player, right, who I submit to you is the Oilers' best winger. On a team that's got some pretty good wingers, I think he's their best winger. So if you take your first line winger off the ice 5-on-5, if you take your either first or second team, power play winger out of the mix, he's gone. He was taking a regular turn on the PK, and he's good at penalty killing. So you take him out of that mix as well. So now both special teams are affected. Then you take away the deterrent factor of Evander Kane. Not too many people screw with Connor McDavid when Evander Kane is on the ice. Or at least they didn't, because they knew that Kane would be up in their face. So they let deterrent value as well. Also, and maybe is important or more so than all of that, they lost his swagger. And I think this team for the first half of the season played like a team without swagger. And some people will call it confidence. Some people will call it ego. I don't care what you call it. It works when it's there. And I think his return to the lineup has corresponded with some of the Oilers' best hockey this season. And I think his injury just served to boldface how important he truly is to this club on the ice and off the ice.
Yeah, and on that note, Kurt, I've never actually, at least in my memory, seen this before. Evander Kane was essentially with the team the entire time that he was hurt, and not just in Edmonton. And he went on multiple long road trips with the team. That, to my knowledge, is a rare occurrence. They don't take players on road trips unless there's a chance that they're playing. They want them back, in their city with the rehab specialist or, whatever they want to do. But it wasn't just that last trip, the Eastern trip and the dad's trip, but he was on at least 3 or 4 of the trips the entire time. He was doing interviews. He was around the team. So there's something about Kane, we see his personality, taking away his past. He seems like, a great teammate, and, you add something to the team. And I think you're absolutely right. Just now that he's back playing, that swaggers even more, and it gives the team confidence. It gives them camaraderie. It gives them that swagger. It gives them a little bit of cockiness, and I think that's good for this group.
I'm gonna have to vote for Zach Hyman. Kurt is the best winger on the Oilers this year. I mean, he has just been out of this world. So and last year Evander Kane was their best winger, but I think Hyman has stepped up and.
Hyman's been great, but you'll never convince me he's a better pure goal scorer than Kane, and you won't convince me that he's better than Kane.
Well, he hasn't been going against Kane at this point because Kane's been out, so it's kind of hard to judge even.
Fair enough.
I mean your overall body of work, and look, not to take away anything from Zach Hyman, who's been terrific this year. What an acquisition!
Yeah, well,
I mean, Zach Hyman and Evander Kane, if there was a Team Canada, could be on Team Canada.
Yep, good point.
If Kane got rolling again, like he did last year, Hyman would be definitely on Team Canada, without a doubt. Nugent Hopkins would be on Team Canada, without a doubt. And maybe even Evander Kane once he gets going. Okay, my bad thing is I'm going to go with two guys who've actually been playing a lot better in just recent weeks. But since no one mentioned Jack Campbell as their bad thing, he's got to be on the list, doesn't he? So he was just kind of historically bad. We honestly hadn't seen goaltending that bad in Edmonton since the 2009-10 season. And we'd seen a lot of bad goaltending in that era, but Jeff Durand-Delorier
had a stretch that was a bit worse there for 6 weeks or so, a couple seasons ago.
Smith, for his first year here, he was brutal for about 6 weeks. He was absolutely horrid.
Sorry to interrupt.
See, he was the number of bad goals he let in was out of this world. It was astronomical, and it was at the same rate that we saw with Jeff Durand-Delorier. In that Jeff and Delorier maintained it for the whole season, and Campbell since then is he's cut down on it. He's cut it tremendously. Like he's at a kind of a normal rate, if not a good rate, for making mistakes on goals against. Nothing unusual at all. He's starting to play well, but man, I agree with you, Kurt. Like that his start almost sunk the Oilers as much as Skinner saved it. You can't have goaltending like that. It was atrocious. And then, the thought that, I was pretty confident he was going to bounce back just from his statistical record. He had been a good goalie 5 or 6 years in a row. That didn't come from nothing. And so I thought, okay, chances are he's going to bounce back, and it looks like he is. My other player I'm going to mention here is Brett Kulak. And a month ago, we were all talking, Oilers need a second pairing left-handed D-man. Well, the reason that discussion was being had was because the guy who was expected or hoped to fill that role this year, Brett Kulak, was not coming close. He was really struggling on defense. And he's not a physical defender. He can be, and he was last year in the playoffs, a strong positional defender, very fast, getting in the way of guys, solid moving the puck. And at the start of the season, I thought he had a decent chance. I thought it was a decent bet that the Oilers had made on Brett Kulak for him to step up into the top four role, that he might be able to do it. Just like Cody Ceci was a decent bet the year before and had actually done so and had stepped up and had been such a solid player for the Oilers last year. I thought, yeah, maybe Kulak's going to do that. But he really didn't. And that's why all that trade talk was going on. That's why it was identified as everybody as a major hole on the team. It is interesting. I mean, Duncan Keith also started off quite poorly with the Oilers and came on as the season went along. And we are seeing this uptick now with Kulak's play during this winning streak. He's playing better hockey. And maybe he's back with his old partner, Barry. They thrived last year in the playoffs. That's a pairing that works. It's in the top. I think it's roughly in the top third of NHL D-men pairings for goals plus minus is Kulak and Barry. So, maybe that at least can work, but that's not really a second pairing. I don't think they can handle. It's certainly not a shutdown pairing. And, what I'd like to see is that kind of thing develop. And I don't think it's Nurse and Ceci as your shutdown pairing. I just don't think that's the right idea. I think you want Darnell Nurse on kind of an attack pairing leading the attack with other strong attackers, and him being kind of the defensive guy out there, the most defensive guy out there, but on an offensive unit. And I think you need CC combined with somebody else who can really shut down the opposition, because I think CC's able to do so. He's not playing as well as he did last year. So it might be Philip Broberry this year, who I think can fulfill that role with Cody CC. But it's I don't know. I don't think it's going to be Kulak, but maybe he's going to surprise us like Duncan Keith did last year and come on super strong in the second half of the season. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen because that was Duncan Keith. Even at the end of his career, he was still Duncan Keith with that kind of incredible intelligence with the puck, moving the puck, reading the game. And so Kulak and Campbell are my bad things, but with an asterisk because they've both been coming on.
A quick shot from me on Jack Campbell. And, Ira alluded to the fact that he had a reset. Actually, he had 2 resets. Twice they went for Stuart Skinner for extended periods of time while Jack practiced. I'm here to tell you guys, that doesn't happen to any other goaltender in the NHL without going to the minors. The amount of patience that the club exhibited in giving him a chance to get his knickers back together was pretty impressive. And surely Jack Campbell thinks, man, I'm lucky I'm in this organization, because I would have found myself in Kalamazoo if I was somewhere else.
Like his old organization in LA with Cal Peterson. And I think he's still down in Ontario.
Yep.
Playing for the
Phoenix
Go there and
Top,
find
he took
yourself,
his job.
Yeah.
Alrighty, I think it's time for some numbers. Bruce, what's your number?
I'm going to just pick a proxy number, and this is 16, and that is the number of, wait for it, game-winning goals scored by the combination of Leon Draisaitl, who has 9 of them, most in the NHL, and Connor McDavid, who has 7. Okay, the Oilers have won 28 games this year, and 2 guys have accounted for 16 of the game-winning goals. And I'm just old school enough, that I still value old school stats like game winners, like plus minus, like 3 stars, like awards at the end of the season. Some of them are just opinions of experts or would-be experts. Some of them are, numbers based on principles that may be a little flawed. And you might say, aha, McDavid scored the 4-1 goal and a 7-3 win over Chicago. What's so special about that goal? And I might say, well, against Tampa Bay in the third period with the game tied 3-3, one guy on both teams was able to score to break that game in favor of his team, and that guy was Connor McDavid. And it was a hell of a goal, too, And meanwhile, you have Leon Draisaitl, who scored in the 59th minute to win a game that was tied in Madison Square Garden. He scored in the 60th minute in Chicago to win that game in regulation. He scored in the 61st minute against Florida to win that game in overtime. He scored in the 56th minute back in Chicago to give the Oilers a little extra lead when they were falling apart, and that wound up being the game winner by a 1-goal win. And a lot of these were huge goals. And it's just, my overall point is that these guys are still doing a lot of the heavy lifting when the game is at its crucial point. The Oilers have got 2 game breakers, and both of them are breaking games.
Indeed. Ira, what's your number?
I actually going to have 2 new numbers that are sequential, numbers 25 and 26. 25 is the Oilers' positive goal differential, and 26 is the number of regulation wins that the Oilers have. And the reason I bring up these specific numbers is they're 2 stats within the overall points standing that I think sometimes provide a little extra context on the level of play of a team. If you go and look at the standings, either by straight points or points percentage, the Oilers are essentially right there with the Kings and the Flames. By straight points, if I just go to it.
And the Golden Knights.
Yeah, that's a good point, but it doesn't drive with my numbers as much, Bruce.
Oh, okay. They're right there with them too. Now all
Don't
of a
let the
sudden.
facts down in the way of a good story.
The Oilers are actually 3 points behind, 3 points behind the Kings, but just a few percentage points ahead by points percentage. And with Calgary, the Oilers are 3 points ahead of the Flames. But the Oilers have a plus 25 goal differential. They've scored 25 more goals than they've given up. The Flames are plus 5, which is respectable, but that's a bubble team. Plus 25 is actually quite good. And the Kings are in the negative. They're minus 10. The Oilers have a 35 goals better than them via goal differential, but the Kings have more points. If I believe the Oilers have the second best goal differential in the Pacific, 1 goal behind Seattle, and the third best in the conference. But yet they're right there in the standings and fighting tooth and nail with the Flames and the Kings. And the other one is regulation wins, which is actually more important a little bit because that's the first tiebreaker at the end of the season. And this one's even more staggering. The Oilers have 26 regulation wins, which is first at the Pacific, first of the Western Conference, and tied for second in the entire NHL. Everybody's behind Boston and everything with Tampa and Toronto. These two metrics just kind of go to show, and I'm gonna might send Bruce on a little bit of a rant here, but the parity that the fake parity of the Bettman point system with I believe the Flames have something like 9 losses in overtime in the shootout. So if you want to call them loser points, the others only have a couple. But as far as winning games in regulation, the Oilers are doing that, and they're doing it with a bullet, especially recently with the plus 25 goal differential. And I think it, for me, puts them in another tier over teams like the Flames and the Kings, and we're going to see that play out a bit in the second half.
The Oilers have only played 6 3-point games this season, and all of the other teams in the Pacific have played at least 10. So in other words, all those teams, their games are valued more than the Oilers are by this cockamamie point system. And so the Oilers have to overcome that disadvantage of their games being worth less than the other teams to still get more points than those teams.
Well, that was a short rant, Bruce. All right. Kurt.
So one brick at a time, David. I've been making these rants
You'll
for
take
20
down,
years.
Bruce.
Still
You'll take down that wall one day. Kurt, your number.
Speaking of short, I was going to say 4 for the 4 gentlemen on this podcast, but instead I will say 33. 33 years since the Edmonton Oilers won their last Stanley Cup. Ken, it's time. Go for it. 33 years is a long time to wait. Not as long as Maple Leaf fans have had to wait, but it's still 33 years. Ken, go for it. The time is nigh.
Kurt, what do you think go for it means? Like, what are you envisioning?
I heard Frank Saravalli on Bob Stauffer's show about 10 days ago, and he said it wasn't the Provorov thing, which I actually disagree with. What I did agree with what he said was, well, why not? I loved it when Frank said, why wouldn't they try to do this and do that? Like, think outside the box, think big. Why can't you get a top 4 D-man and Jonathan Toews? Like other teams do it. Ken's the longest serving, most respected general manager in the NHL. Earn your paycheck, Ken. Put this team in the Stanley Cup final.
All right, I like that. That was bracing. That was good, Kurt. We should have ended there instead of my number, which is not as it's kind of exciting. Nugent Hopkins and Zach Hyman are having career years, and I don't know. I haven't looked at this yet, but how rare is it for players of their age? Nugent's 30 this year, Hyman's 30 this year, I think. How rare is it for a player at age 30 to have his career year? I mean, I think it's happened. Maybe like Johnny Busick, and just guessing on him off the top of my head. But
5.
for not just a career year, but in the, near the top end of the scoring. So Hyman is 11th in scoring. He's got 60 points in 49 games. He's gonna, if he keeps at this pace, he will get a chance to get 100 points. Same with Nugent Hopkins, who also has 60 points. He's tied for 11th with Hyman and Sidney Crosby. So 60 tied with Sidney Crosby, not bad.
Say that again, hey? Yeah.
Yeah, tied with Sidney Crosby in scoring, just behind Mikko Rantanen, and ahead of the Immortals, Mitch Marner, William Nylander, and where's Austin Matthews? I don't even know where he is.
He's not playing, so he's tumbling down the scoring roll a little bit.
Yeah, he's only played 47 games, Austin Matthews, 53 points in 47
for 3 weeks.
It's out for the All-Star break. That's how I would put it. Anyway, Hyman and Nugent Hopkins Nugent's been playing fantastic defensive hockey as well as his offensive contribution. He's gotten a lot tougher and meaner, something that I never thought I would say about Nugent, that he's kind of a tough and mean SOB at times out there, but he is this year. He really is, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I just think he's fed up of. He's at that age where he's just thinking, why am I letting young guys walk all over me? Like, what's that all over? He just got tired of it, and he's putting his foot down, and he's putting it down hard. Hyman, he just seems to get better. We saw him come in last year. He was really good, and now he's just better. He seems faster, more confident with the puck, more able to make plays at speed. They're both, probably on heaters, and I'm glad they're not in their contract seasons. I can say that with certainty. This would be a nightmare at this point to sign either of those guys, but they're on these long-term deals, and it speaks well of the future of these long-term deals. I don't think they're going to continue to score at this rate, but even if they drop off 10, 20%, that's not such a terrible drop-off from 100 points if they get close to that. So they're probably more likely going to get something in the low 90s. I'm guessing that might drop off a little bit. Two fantastic hockey players. And with Evander Kane, it gives the Oilers 5 forwards at the top of the lineup. And, Kurt, you're talking about going for it. Ken Holland sure did last year when he picked up Evander Kane.
Yep.
And Hyman. So, I'd like to, Kurt, what you're saying, I'd like to see what they might have in mind. There's some exciting players who are on the market, and that would be amazing if the Oilers could get one. And maybe they're going to give up the first pick and a really good prospect, but I agree. If you can make it happen, I just don't want to see them pick up a player like, who's the guy from Columbus, Gavrikov, like the first pick for Gavrikov. That makes me, when I hear that, I feel like throwing up, honestly. Like, are you serious? That's not the trade that you make.
Not for a first.
Not for a first.
Seen the highlight from last night where he got walked in overtime.
He's probably a good player. I haven't watched him enough to say whether, maybe I'm just dead wrong about the player. But come on, if you're going to make a move, make sure you get better. Make sure you get a really, really good hockey player who can make a difference in the playoffs. Go for it with your trade.
I think we could probably do a full separate hour-long podcast parlaying on Kurt's number there and go for it. And I don't disagree with Kurt. In fact, I agree with him, but I'm also somewhat of a realist. I'm a guy that kind of looks at the cap situation quite a bit and knows the nuances and the restrictions of LTIR and what you can and cannot do. And I agree, but I also know that it's very, very, very hard. And bullets spent this year, such as first-round picks and former first-round picks, can't be brought back in future seasons, which are also going to be go-for-it seasons when hopefully the team will not be in LTIR and accruing cap space and prorating acquired contracts, which they cannot do this year. So I don't disagree, but I also I don't make $5 million like Ken Holland does, but it's tough to see how they can necessarily do it. And it's not that not willing to give up the first round picks and the Borgos. I am, but it's not just that; it's making the money work. In addition,
a lot of people are talking about one $3 million player having to go out. Don't discount the possibility of two $3 million players going out.
For sure, you got to pay to of them probably. But yes,
Yep.
as I said, we could do a whole podcast on this, and maybe we
Or a
should.
D-man making that kind of money going out and a forward,
Mhm.
right? I mean, they could move one of their mid-level D-man if they're looking to improve their top four. So anyway, David,
Yeah, they
I
could.
gotta say, David, great pull on Johnny Busick. I looked him up here, and he at age 34, his career high was 69 points. And at age 35, he had 116 points with the famous 1970-71 Boston Bruins, where he scored 51 goals, 48 points on the power play. Former member of the Edmonton Flyers. You know, he's from these parts. And after that, remember his career high was 69. In his next 4 seasons, he got 83, 93, 75, 81, 83 points. His next 5 seasons. So maybe we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with Nuge and Hyman, and they're establishing their new level that they're going to keep scoring at for a few years after this. You know, that's really the hope, especially when you got both guys locked up for the next 5+ years. So.
We could call it the Johnny Bower Award for career high after 30.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, Mike Smith had that big year, but he had other big years too. All right, guys, let's leave it there. It was great to talk to all of you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
It was fun. My battery wishes it could have gone longer.
And in the meantime, and in between time, this has been another edition of the Cult Hockey Podcast.
Thanks for listening.